first of what I hope will become a fairly regular YouTube feed. Maybe I'll post it on YouTube, maybe I'll post it on soulexplore.com. Not entirely sure as yet. There's actually not much I'm sure of at this moment in terms of what I intend to do with this. It's more of an experiment of sorts. I've done quite a bit of blogging in the past few years. I've been writing at soulexplore.com and on the Conscious Living Forum. But after talking to a few people who advised me that I should try and create some YouTube videos, I don't really have anything that I plan to say. This is just an ad hoc, spur of the moment kind of thing. So let's see where this goes. Hope you enjoy it. And if not, feel free not to watch. Anyway. At the moment I'm sitting right outside my house in a small town in Japan. The name of the town is Takigawa, and it's an interesting story. That's how I came to move here with my family. I spent many years living in a big city in Toronto, Canada, and Toronto, like any other big city, like New York or Tokyo or London, thrives on that sort of the energy of the mind created identity. It's almost like a vortex that draws your attention into almost perpetually maintaining that sense of an identity, a sense of an imagined identity, because that's what everyone's doing around you. And in order to function or to be taken seriously or to have any relevance in that sort of a society, you almost feel obliged to function that sort of way, which is fine, except it becomes sort of compulsive. And over time, we begin to lose our sense of who we really are, which is something much vaster, much deeper than that image that we're almost perpetually maintaining. So whether it be through social media, on the internet, through Twitter, through Facebook, or whether it be through our day-to-day interactions in society, there's almost this perpetual compulsive need to maintain this image because it becomes a survival game. If you're not maintaining your image, then that image begins to deteriorate, not only in your own eyes, but in the eyes of people around you. And so it's a bit of a neurotic way to live, and that I think is an understatement, to put it that way. And so I found, or we found, my wife and I, that over time, even though we're quite conscientious and aware and conscious people, that it sort of creeps in very insidious kinds of ways, and that neurosis finds its way into your life through little cracks and fissures, and after a while you find that you spend a lot of your time thinking about how you are going to live your life rather than actually living it, right? Living and thinking about living, or doing something and thinking about doing something, are completely different things, different experiences, and they have a different effect on you physiologically. When you're doing something, even if it's a challenging task or a hard task, it might cause a certain amount of stress on your body, on your mind, and your faculties, but it's not the kind of stress that has long-lasting negative effects. It's a kind of stress that's almost a good stress. It pushes your limits, and it's the kind of stress that you can recover from really fast after a period of rest or relaxation or sleep. But the thinking about doing or the thinking about living creates a whole different kind of stress. It's a self-perpetuating kind of stress, because the more you think, the more stressed out you get, the more fodder you have to think about it, and it becomes this perpetual whirlpool, this maelstrom of anxiety that is always functioning within you, and it becomes, for most, I would say, the primary motivator for why they do anything. It's more out of anxiety, more out of fear, more out of this sense of uncertainty of what will happen, and therefore trying to take measures in order to prevent a negative outcome that motivates them than anything else, right? That is, to me, a very unfortunate way to live. Now, it may be the norm, but it's unfortunate all the same. And so it was very clear to us that to live in that way was not a choice we wanted to make. And so through certain circumstances and choices we made, we've decided we've moved here to this small town, which is primarily in an agricultural belt in the northernmost island of Hokkaido, Japan. And the pace of life, as you can see, is a lot slower. I don't know if you can see that actually, but maybe you can sense it. Of course, society in Japan is no different from society anywhere. People all over the world, it doesn't matter what culture you come from, share the same neuroses. They share the same fears, and they're driven by the same anxieties. By no means am I saying that we've come to a more awakened or conscious part of the world. But there is something to be said about being in nature. Here we are surrounded by mountains. This town sits in a valley called the Sorachi Valley, and there's mountains all around us. And most of the people here are engaged in farming, as I mentioned. So there's lots of rice farms and paddy fields all around us, and there's just a sense of openness and sense of space. And with that sense of space and openness, when you witness it through your eyes, it has sort of a mirror effect upon you on the inside, and you begin to mirror that. You begin to mimic that on the inside. It almost a sense of presence from you. That's the wind. Give me a second. So this choice is there to be made by each and every one of us. Now, you don't have to up and leave. You don't have to drastically change your life. That's just something we chose to do. But it's important to always be aware that there's always this choice that you have, whether to live through the filter of that image that you have of yourself in your mind, that will never be enough, will never be complete, will always be lacking something, and therefore you're constantly maintaining it, like you're maintaining a car or a house, and there's always repairs to be done and things that could be better, or improvements or renovations that could be made, or a leak that's sprung, and you need to suddenly invest a lot of time. Or you could realize that that's just a figment of your imagination, perhaps a necessary tool to function in society, and that's fine. I'm not saying to get rid of it or to do away with it, but to realize that there's so much more to you than that. That's just a surface phenomenon, a veneer on your sense of identity. There's a deeper dimension within you that is always available to you when you are willing, even for a moment, to just drop that perpetual compulsive need to think about yourself. And thinking about yourself can happen in many ways. You don't have to actively be doing it. You could simply, it sometimes runs almost like a loop in the background. Just like when you get a song stuck in your head, and it's just as you're doing other things, and the song keeps playing over and over on a loop. Similarly, a lot of our thought patterns just keep playing on a loop. It could be some particularly nasty thought pattern, such as I'm not good enough, I'm a loser, I should be more successful, I'm a terrible person. Or it could just be something very mundane, such as, I need to do the groceries, I need to pick up the kids, I need to get more stuff done before the end of the day. Whatever it is, it's constantly operating like the swirling streams, the eddies. It's like an eddy of energy flowing within you, and it generates this sort of constant stress within your system, which may not even be palpable to you. It may be such an ordinary experience. It may have become such a part of your normal experience of life that you may not be able to discern it as being something different than what you normally do. But if you give yourself a chance to just stop, stop what you're doing, what you're thinking, stop everything, and sit down or stand and simply allow yourself to immerse your whole being in this moment. If you close your eyes, whether you leave them open, whether you're looking at something in particular or nothing particular at all. Just simply stop everything and allow yourself to feel what it truly feels like to be here, to be now, to be alive. Something we take for granted, so much for granted. This very fact that we are alive in this moment is one of the things that we take most for granted. It's something ordinary. It's like, okay, we're alive, so what? So what? Try holding your breath for 2 minutes and then see how refreshing, rejuvenating, and rewarding that first breath that you take in when your lungs are gasping for air and that panic sets in. See how rewarding that feels. That's the moment you can appreciate what it feels like to be alive. And yet, because breathing is so easy and effortless and it just happens anyways, and we're breathing from one moment to the next, you realize those breaths are what are keeping you alive. They stopped. There's no way you can continue living, and yet they just happen of their own accord. You're trying to do anything about it, and so you tend to take this whole experience of life as a given. But when you immerse yourself, truly immerse yourself in a moment, in any given moment, it doesn't matter where you are. You don't have to be meditating. You could be sitting in your car. You could be standing in line at the grocery store. You could be at the baseball stadium watching a game. But you truly immerse yourself in a moment. The only rational response that you can have is one of gratitude. the only rational response you can have in that moment. And it's not that sort of effusive gratitude of, oh, thank you so much, bliss. No, it's just this very quiet feeling of gratitude, surrender, and fullness. That is essentially what this experience of life is about. So I know there's a lot of spiritual disciplines that advise you to practice gratitude, in a sort of mechanical way. To be honest with you, I'm not a terrible fan of those sort of teachings or those practices, because anything that is learned by the mind and can then be perpetuated by the mind as a sort of identity. It then becomes I have to now sit down and practice gratitude. And yes, you might achieve this, the pseudo sense of it, but it doesn't happen in an organic way. It's a practice, it's sort of mechanical fashion that happens, right? And your mind begins to attach this sort of undue significance to that experience. And said, gratitude is not something you need. Gratitude is what emerges spontaneously, like a flower blooms in spring as soon as the sun comes up and the weather warms up, and the flower just spontaneously blooms, not because it's been told to, it just does. Similarly, when you truly just let go for a moment of all your thoughts, your ideas, your notions of what should be happening or what you should be up to, or what you did, or what you are going to do, and all that stuff that consumes so much of our lives on a day-to-day basis, almost without a break, from the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment we go to sleep, and even in our sleep, in our dreams, it's going on, right, all the time. And if you just take a little pause, just of time, a sliver of time, and that's all you need to do. It's not a big ask, a sliver of time. You say, okay, I'm going to stop. Just for now, wherever I am. I don't have to set up any special conditions in order to do it. I don't need to buy a certain kind of meditation cushion. I don't need there to be a particular amount of quiet in the environment. I don't need my family to be away from me. It could be anywhere. And it's especially effective when it is spontaneous and in an unplanned sort of way. Simply stop. And just allow yourself to soak in, whether visually, you have your eyes closed, and through your ears, through sound, the totality of everything around you. And you will see, you will sense that it mirrors a depth within you that is always present. It always is a part of you. It is you. In the strictest sense, it is you. And then you might find a thought coming back in and then making, comments on this experience or trying to qualify it in some ways. Yeah, a thought might come in and say, oh, I'm so present. Okay, let it come in, but don't allow yourself to then ride that train, that thought train, to wherever it's taking you. Come back to the present and feel the depth of who you are. And if you surrender to it enough, even for a minute, you will notice how drastically different that experience of who you are is from your day-to-day mind-formulated experience. Now, if you do this on a fairly regular basis, and you begin to do it more and more, it will slowly alter your whole value system, internal value system, because your value system has been conditioned. It's been in the works from the day you were born, and it's been building, and it's been constructed. The scaffolding was erected a long, long time ago, and everyone in your environment has conspired, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but unwittingly conspired to create this false identity for you. But it's up to you to see through that veneer and get reconnected with who you really are under that.